Thank you. I just want to start out by talking about a potential reauthorization of NNI, which, as I mentioned in the opening statement, we haven't done since 2003. I just want to start by asking any recommendations that anyone has of, starting with Dr. Whitman, anything you'd like to see in a reauthorization of NNI?
So as I commented in general, we think that the 2003 Act is fairly good. We've, I think, discussed in the past with a number of the members, one of the peculiar aspects of it is that there are actually multiple assessments called for in that Act on different time scales and on different time scales than our other reporting. So we have both a National Nanotechnology Assessment Panel and a National Research Council panel on different time scales, plus annual budget supplements and triennial strategic plans. So as the director of the office responsible for all of that, it's somewhat of a perpetual cycle of preparing for a review, responding for a review, and so having a somewhat more efficient schedule for those and perhaps not as much redundancy would be helpful.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is if we look at the maturity of nanotechnology, it's tempting to say there are winners and we should invest in those winners and really develop technologies to a higher level, and I think that should happen. However, nanoscience itself remains a fertile area for breakthroughs, unanticipated new technologies, and so I think a diversified portfolio, both on the fundamental research side and on the applied side, is critical to take advantage of the full potential of this field.
Thank you. Dr. Stevenson?
Yes, I'd like to comment. We had in an I site, one of these infrastructure nanotechnology network sites at our Pickle Research Campus that's home of the Materials Research and Engineering Center, and they were part of the NSF last round of funding, and they decided not to fund any of the new NNI sites. And this had quite an impact on our local campus, just being able to bridge the gap. So we have a lot of facilities that need care and feeding, and also there's a large user base with dedicated staff scientists. And without that continued funding, then there's bridge funds essentially that are needed in order to keep that operational. The other thing to recognize is that a lot of this infrastructure that has like these networks that have been built up, now there's several other new initiatives that actually are intertwined with the development and discoveries made in nanotechnology, such as the materials genome, the BRAIN initiative, and a few others, mesoscale science in particular with the Department of Energy. Those types of new initiatives actually rely on a lot of the infrastructure and resources that were established by the NIN over the last 13 years.
Thank you. Dr. Pearson?
Thank you, sir. I just would follow up. GAO in past work on looking at the NNI, of course, encourages a risk management-based approach on nano environment, health, safety issues. So it just would encourage, based on our past work, focus on that, although, again, in the same mode that Mr. Ivey was talking about in terms of a reasonable regulation type domain. I would also just echo what our study found, one of the large emphasis on the need for international standards on these things as it moves into the commercial sector. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I want to move on to technology transfer that I think is critical. I know, Dr. Hersam, when you're starting your company, Nanointegris, that you applied and received SBIR grants, which you talked about. Can you talk about the importance of SBIR program? And I'll start with you and see if anyone else has any comments about what can be done to improve technology transfer when it comes to nanotech.
Yeah, so I would say the SBIR program has been absolutely critical. In the very early stages, it allows prototype development. I think that's key in order to get additional private capital injected into nanotech companies. The Phase 2 funding is especially important for going to the next level, which is often the scale-up level. The scale-up is critical if you want to get your product to a larger market. I think there's an opportunity to reassess the Phase 3 program. Often when you're entering into Phase 3, you approach this valley of death where if the company doesn't get a significant injection of capital, it can perish at that stage. And I think there's a lot of companies that are suffering at that moment. A little bit more investment from the federal government there would bring those to a profitable level, and that, of course, would lead to economic growth.
Anyone else want to? Okay, I'll yield back.